Welcome to day 162 of the New Way. I'll read Luke 10:25 through 37. On one occasion, an expert in the law stood up to test Jesus. "Teacher," he asked, "what must I do to inherit eternal life?" "What is written in the law?" he replied. "How do you read it?" He answered, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength and with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself." "You have answered correctly," Jesus replied. "Do this, and you will live." But he wanted to justify himself. So he asked Jesus, "And who is my neighbor?" In reply, Jesus said, "A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho when he was attacked by robbers. They stripped him of his clothes, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. A priest happened to be going down the same road, and when he saw the man, he passed by on the other side. So too, a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, as he traveled, came where the man was, and when he saw him, he took pity on him. He went to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. Then he put the man on his donkey, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 denarii and gave them to the innkeeper. 'Look after him,' he said, 'and when I return, I will reimburse you for any extra expense you may have.' Which of these 3 do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of robbers?" The expert in the law replied, "The one who had mercy on him." Jesus told him, "Go and do likewise." This teaching began with a question by a Jewish expert in the law. I'll read it again from Luke 10:25. On one occasion, an expert in the law stood up to test Jesus. "Teacher," he asked, "what must I do to inherit eternal life?" But instead of answering, Jesus replied with a question in Luke 10:26. "What is written in the law?" he replied. "How do you read it?" The lawyer replied, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength and with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself." And Jesus' affirmative response in Luke 10:28 was, "You have answered correctly. Do this and you will live." But then the lawyer asked another question, "Who is my neighbor?" And Jesus answered with a parable. So what would you say is the answer to that question? Who is your neighbor? I want to spend just a few minutes sorting out the characters in this parable. The priest. The priest was probably on his way to do ministry. We don't know why he didn't stop, but assume that he was too busy with his own plans and busy schedule. I was leading a Bible study for a group of young mothers when I was living in Denver. We usually had 10 to 12 ladies and 15 to 20 kiddos under school age. We met weekly on Tuesday mornings at my home. One Tuesday morning, a couple of hours before the group, one of the young mothers called and was crying that she needed to go to the doctor because of an infection. Her husband had already left for work and she couldn't reach him. She had a newborn baby and a very energetic 2-year-old that would need care while she was at the doctor's. At first, I told her I couldn't help her. And then God reminded me of this story that Jesus had told. I called Denise back and told her that I had canceled the Bible study and was free to take her to the doctor and help with the 2 babies. I ministered to her and her babies until her husband got home that afternoon. But was that a wise decision, since I had to desert 10 to 12 other ladies who were planning on coming and hearing me teach? All I know is that's the way God led me, and I know Denise needed my help. The Levite. The Levite was a descendant of the tribe of Levi. They were prohibited from being priests. Instead, they oversaw everything at the temple: the music, the property maintenance, the audio and visual equipment. Only kidding. We would probably call them administrative pastors or facilities managers. He too was too busy to be bothered by a single person's needs. The third character was the Samaritan. We've already talked about the Jews' hatred for the Samaritans because of their intermingled race and contaminated belief system. Jesus picked these 3 characters because they would stick out in the minds of his hearers. He was in the process of turning the world upside down. I pray that your eyes will be open to your neighbors. You might find them in your own family, on your block, or maybe even across town. Because of the internet, you may even discover neighbors around the world. Who is your neighbor? In his service, Dale.